What's going on YouTube? Cloverbells here, back with another Scarlet Violet video, and today we're going to be talking about two Pokemon in particular, Rotom-Wash and Gastrodon. Yes, this is another one of our spotlight videos, and I wanted to do these two specifically just because I feel like, you know, because the Iron Bundle situation as well as like the Palafin situation, they're both coinciding, so now there gives room to have these two Pokemon on your teams. And what we're going to be doing is talking about there's certain niche that you could have with these two, especially on some of your teams, so this way you can get some ideas for your team building. And we'll also back up some of our claims with some tournament data and results that have utilized both of these Pokemon to positive records in some regional play, right? So let's start with the Rotom-Wash here, and then we'll do the Gastrodon, right? But the idea here is with Rotom-Wash, you'd have Levitate, right? And I feel like if any Pokemon has Levitate, you have a niche in the meta, right? Because what does Levitate do right now in regulationC? It gives you a little bit of an immunity to the Ting-Lu stuff, right? So you can't click Fissure, the Stomping Tantrum is not going to go into the Rotom, and some Ting-Lus carry Heavy Slam, but again, you're going to resist that because you're a water type, right? And even like an electric type in general. So you have that niche, right? So you can actually beat the Ting-Lu in that sense, because you also have a super effective water move into it, right? So a typical set will also just not only just have like Hydro Pump, wait, actually let me just put it here, but you also have access to Thunderbolt, right? And now you have an electric coverage move against an opposing Palafin, an opposing Gyarados, and even some of the Iron Bundles that are still running around. But now from here, you do get a little bit of variance in how you want to use the bundle. I'm sorry, the Rotom-Wash. You could either see Nasty Plot over here and Protect just to have a little bit more of an aggressive Rotom. If you're able to set this up next to some redirection support like an Amoonguss, you can definitely do that. Or you just go simply Will-O-Wisp over here, and the idea behind Will-O-Wisp is, of course, just like Arcanine that run Will-O-Wisp, you're just able to neuter physical attackers, right? So think of your Dragon types that are doing a lot of damage. Think of your other Paradox Pokemon that are doing a lot of damage, you know, like an opposing Iron Hands or Roaring Moon. These are all things that once they take a Will-O-Wisp, they're just not really doing that much damage, right? So that's the idea with Rotom. So you can either be like this offensive threat or this defensive Pokemon or support Pokemon with your Levitate, you know, and your Will-O-Wisp, skill. Okay, so from there, like, where would you like try and use Rotom? Let me just take away the Gastrodon for a second. I feel like Rotom is really good next to, you know, something that wants to click Earthquake. So if you can just imagine stuff like either Great Tusk, Rotom stuff, or even Garchomp, and then from there, they always like some Tailwind user. So whether it's something like Talonflame or something like a Murkrow or like a Corviknight, you know, these are all things that can give you a starting core, right? If you do choose to start it that way. So like Great Tusk, Talonflame, Garchomp, Talonflame, and then you can have a Rotom over here. That also works. And then in some cases, you can also see, Ting-Lu clicking Earthquake if the situation calls for it, right? I have seen this a couple times, but this is not as common as the other two. But the idea is if you are going to use the Rotom, ideally you want to be paired to next one of these ground type Earthquake users along with some Tailwind support. So that's your starting core. And then from there, you can just go with like some typical balanced stuff, you know, slap on a Fluttermane, slap on like Arcanine and Amoonguss, and then there you go. There's your 6. Or slap on like Chi-Yu, Fluttermane, and Gyarados, you know, for another type of example. Well, technically you can't really use Gyarados because you already have a Rotom, but you know, the Arcanine, for example, right? And then from there, honestly, I just want to showcase some teams that have utilized the Rotom in this sense. And then we can also see some items and some Tera types. So let's start here with Colin's team here from the EUIC. So basically, yeah, this is exactly what I thought. You have, I like how this is named Air Jordan. You do have the Earthquake stuff with the Ting-Lu. Okay, so there is some synergy here. And then at the same time, you know, you're able to also into the opposing Ting-Lu, not get fissured, not get Stomping Tantrum, not, you know, take an opposing Earthquake from like an opposing Garchomp. And then this is a Will-O-Wisp set with Protect. So this, and it's also Tera Steel. So that's also interesting from Colin, right? Steel is pretty good with Levitate. So this way your only weakness is just fire, right? But this is also really good against like an opposing Fluttermane that just wants to click Moonblast against a Rotom for that matter. So I understand the synergy there. And again, with Levitate, you know, imagine like Bronzong. That's the whole idea there. So there's some good synergy here. And then is there any Tailwind here? There is no Tailwind, but that's okay. So if we move on to another team, this is Mateo's team, also from the EUIC. Let me just make this a little bit bigger so you guys can see it. So this is the Garchomp stuff. Like we said, with the Talonflame, this is pretty much the way I would do it, actually. If I had to build a team with Rotom-Wash, I'd probably just do something like this, right? Especially with flying type Chien-Pao. Yeah, actually, this is like perfect. I would not choose another team than just this, right? Garchomp, Chien-Pao, and then Fire, Water, Grass with Rotom-Wash, Amoonguss, Talonflame, and then you have the Fluttermane here as your dominant fairy type, right? And then the steel coverage, you're still getting that with this Rotom here. So we've seen 2 Rotoms with Terra Steel, all right? So you still get your Fire, Water, Grass, Dragon, Fairy, Steel concept in terms of your balanced team, right? This is perfect. So shout outs to Mateo for doing this. If you had to use Rotom, I would just do something like this, okay? Then if we go into, backtrack a little bit to Fort Wayne, and this is from Skylar, who also had pretty much a similar idea. You have some Tailwind user, in this case a Corviknight, you have a Slapdown Fluttermane, and then your Garchomp is actually a Great Tusk over here. But same idea, you have something where you can Earthquake next to, and then instead of Chien-Pao flying type, you have a Tyranitar flying type, where you can just also, Earthquake next to that thing if you so need to do it. But similar kind of build, similar kind of concept. Tera Electric, so now with this, you don't have any weaknesses, and the Covert Cloak is actually another interesting item of choice, but this also makes sense, right? In terms of, not getting faked out, the Salt Cure stuff. But yeah, these other items, this was either Safety Goggles, and this is also Safety Goggles, right? So you're trying to get around the Amoonguss stuff, and you don't get slept, okay? So this is pretty much the way to try and run Rotom, okay? So you have some dominant Earthquake ground type user, you have Tailwind support on your team, and maybe some other Mon that has like Terra Flying with it. So this way you have Rotom and the Terra Flying option that you can Earthquake next to you, okay? So yeah, I feel like Rotom has a pretty good niche right now as opposed to like Regulation B where you didn't see it at all, okay? And again, you also have the offensive pressure, like we said, against an opposing water type like a Gyarados or a Palafin for that matter. So definitely Rotom has some use here. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at Gastrodon here and see what use Gastrodon is. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at the Gastrodon here. So with Storm Drain, this is the main ability that gives its viability. Okay, Water Ground is a pretty good typing. You are 4 times weak to Grass. There's not too much Grass coverage going around unless you're like Tera Grass for something, or with Tera Blast. Because other than that, what else is really doing like big damage in the Gastrodon? Maybe, yes, a Fluttermane, of course. And you do have the Iron Bundle that is still around. But again, the key is that it's not as much around as before, okay? So with Gastrodon, what are you able to do? You're able to counter a lot of the Palafins, right? Because most Palafins, what do they have? Either Jet Punch or Wave Crash. And what does that do to Gastrodon? Absolutely nothing. You completely wall it, unless some of them have like the occasional tech move, like, Bulk Up Drain Punch, for example. But even then, it's just like not completely optimal in that sense, right? So Gastrodon's pretty good into the Palafins. Like we said, it's also pretty good against like an opposing Dondozo a little bit. Now you do have to be careful, right? I know that some of them have Wave Crash or Liquidation or whatnot, but you do have to be careful because a lot of them have Tera Grass, Tera Blast, okay? And the reason why they're doing this is for like an opposing Palafin. So just be careful, right? If you have open team sheets, make sure you check to see that the Dondozo has Tera Grass, Tera Blast. Otherwise, that's exactly what it's going to go for. Otherwise, if they committed the Tera, then you're in a good spot because it can't really click that move, okay? But again, just be aware. So besides that, what else do you have access to? You have a bunch of coverage moves, and you have a pretty good support move in Yawn. So with Yawn, you're able to, force potential sleeps, force potential switch outs, get him out of position. Similar to how like, an opposing Dondozo nowadays would click Yawn, or like Sylveon would click Yawn. Gastrodon has access to that too. So now you're in a pretty tight bind if you got Yawns, because now what do? Do you stay in and force to take the sleep, or do you switch out and get out of position and take essentially free damage from, the Gastrodon and maybe the slot next to it, right? You also get access to other moves like, of course, Earth Power. That's your main stab move. Good against steel types like a King Gambit, a Goldango. Good against fire types like Arcanine, for example. It's just a great, coverage move in general. And then from here, you have access to either like Muddy Water stuff, which is, again, self-explanatory. It's just a water stab move that can get the occasional accuracy drop. Just don't miss, okay? And then Ice Beam is another good coverage move. Again, this is like if you have to give up one of these. I don't think you can technically run all 3 because I feel like Recover and Protect are necessary, unlike Gastrodon. Just being able to click Recover and get, recovery stuff. Health back, I should say, is important, but you do get access to these moves. So Ice Beam is good against like other flying types. It's good against you know, the dragons that are running around. Think of, you know, Dragonite, Garchomp, you know, Roaring Moon. You know, these are all like dragon types that just don't want to be taking Ice Beams unless they're forced to Tera. So you're able to do that at the very least. But again, there is some use for Gastrodon, and now what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at some of these teams that have utilized it. So let's look over here at Eitzel's team from the EUIC. So this is, again, Gastrodon with Arcanine over here. Fire, Water, Grass card because the Arcanine has a grass typing over here, but also gets Clear Smog. Okay, yeah, I forgot about that. So with Clear Smog, just like the Among Us role, you're able to, you know, clear your debuffs on the Dondozo. For example, you can even use it on yourself if you really need to just remove Intimidates, but he doesn't really have that problem over here because he has a back Scalper. But again, Dragon, Fairy type Tera over here, which is actually pretty good. No Steel type, but that's okay. But still, there's some like good defensive synergies here with Gastrodon. I especially like this with Chiyu, so this way you're able to do a little bit more damage with your Earth Power. So a little bit more supportive here. But again, you're at Clear Smog and Yawn, so there's some niche here. All right, let's take a look at Connor McBride's team from Fort Wayne. This is also a pretty good way to use Gastrodon. So with Ceruledge and Gyarados, so double water type here with both Tera Flying, you know, so I guess he's really afraid of the Ting-Lu stuff. You know, so here's another one, Earth Power, Muddy Water, and Clear Smog. Again, we talked about Clear Smog, but the other one, this is Leftovers, so you're getting passive recovery. So really interesting team that he has over here. And then if we look at Nate's team, all right, also from Fort Wayne, this one has the Mousehold stuff with also the Gastrodon here, but this is Tera Fire Gastrodon. If you recall, 45 Mice's team, you know, Justin Knox, for a hot minute, they were playing around with Tera Fire Gastrodon here because, you know, what can beat fire? Basically, you know, another water move, but if you're clicking that, then you're just absorbing it with Storm Drain, right? So this one is a more, look, you got a couple coverage moves here. You got Ice Beam and Earth Power. So you're giving up the Clear Smog, you're giving up the Yawn, but you do get Recover, and you do have Protect now. So there's that. Okay, and of course, Covert Cloak here. So Talonflame, Tailwind stuff. Oh, it's got Quick Guard. That's actually pretty good. And then from here, you know, it's back Scalper once again. And then, you know, the Chien-Pao here is just going to make, you know, the back Scalper do a little bit more damage. And then, oh, this is Population Bomb Mousehold. That's actually kind of cool. And here's the Gothitelle with Trick Room stuff. So that's pretty good with Gastrodon over here because Gastrodon's very slow. Okay. And then you're just able to outspeed things in Trick Room, for example. So a couple teams here trying to make use of Gastrodon. But again, it has that use just like Rotom over here. So if you're trying to find like other, you know, less meta Pokemon, you can definitely consider Gastrodon and Rotom because like, who are the other kings of the water right now? Of course, you have Palafin, you have Gyarados, okay, and then you have the occasional Zoomerils, all right, and of course, what's even a little bit higher in uses than the Zoomeril right now is definitely an opposing Iron Bundle, although it has dropped a little bit in use, like I have said previously, but I think it's still at like 20%, so maybe not as low as one would think, but there has been some use for both of these, but these are pretty much your best water types in the meta at the moment. Right, but these four are definitely above the other two, but I still wanted to cover the other two just to show that there is some niche to try and use them, you know, on certain teams. Just it really all depends on what you're trying to build and what you're trying to counter, because that's really what they're meant to do. They just have like very specific jobs that maybe they're not as splashable as some of the others, but if they just have one job and one job only, then they can fulfill that role on your team. All right, so that's going to be doing it for now. Again, this is just a quick little spotlight shedding some light on, you know, the Gastrodon and the Rotom use. All right, so we'll be back with another video in the next one, guys. Peace out and have a good one.